Oh boy, welcome back to the Monster Hunter journey where I don't have a huge update for you. Alatreon still lives. We got stupidly close, I think. I don't know. Well, I think so. I think so. I still underestimated going into that day yesterday just how long this fight is and what it demands. I would compare this to an FF14 Ultimate in the way we're doing it. The best pull we had, I actually, once again, threw away. And people are very confused as to how this can happen, I think. Some people get it, and some people are like, how is it possible? How did I throw it away? I could survive the 5th Escobar, I think it is, the 5th Eschaton, but I had forgotten we toppled it. And we were 29 minutes into the fight at that point. We had no carts or anything left, and honestly, everything in my head was like, this is done, because there's actually more prog to this fight than I realized, and there's a system in place. It's kind of really funny. I'm going to get to the vote shortly, where people have been sending me a lot of messages. It's very clear a lot of people have probably never soloed this fight. Not a huge amount. There are quite a few people who've been watching along who have soloed it, but the ones who haven't, it's pretty clear they never learned how the fight works. So for me personally, I'm having a lot of like MMO flashbacks with a lot of the commentary regarding this fight in general. Or they killed it with different weapons and things. I will be very interested to find out after I defeat Alatreon, and I will. Is my weapon considered one of the good ones or the bad ones for this fight? Does everybody have their own problems with this fight? In terms of like pros and cons to whichever weapon system you use. I'd be really curious to find out how that works out. But either way, there's a methodology to the fight that I have to get really comfortable with. And that methodology is I can prevent its elemental change by breaking the horns, and I can topple it each phase for the first 2 phases, which allows transition into the 3rd phase. However, in the 3rd phase, I can no longer break the horns, and I'm going to have this weird phase where I can't really topple it because it won't take the elemental damage. So I just have to do sort of raw damage in this phase 3, and then we get to like phase 4, where it will switch again, and I can go back to trying to topple it, which will enable me to enter phase 5. That's kind of the process I need to go through. And what that also allows me to do, which is really interesting, is allows me to juggle when that 3rd sort of lame phase occurs. So if I don't break the horn in phase 2, it's not actually the end of the world. It just means I'm going to do the other phase early. However, it probably means that going into phase 5, we're going to be screwed again. So it's like there's some leeway, but not really, depending on how much damage we get out. Meaning it's a very complex fight. And coming back to the throw, there was definitely a fight an encounter yesterday where we threw, and we should have killed it. I have no idea how much HP it had left, but it wasn't a lot, I don't think. Like, the feeling I'm having at like 30 minutes deep into this fight is like, this has got to be over soon. The fight has nothing left to throw at me, right, at that point. Is because during that fight, I think we did knockdowns and topples probably 7, 8 times, something like that, between wall bangs and topples and shooting it out of the air. All these things, over half an hour, you can get lost in the sauce, is what I was describing it as. It's like, I'm lost in the sauce a little bit because, you know, we've done 4 of these phases right now. Many knockdowns, and it kind of blurs together because the fight doesn't really change, right? It's not, I was explaining it, it's like, it's not like, say, an epic raid boss battle, right? If you think of any of the longest, most epic raid boss battles that I've done, the finale of the fight is very distinct. Typically, the final phase of the fight will be highly distinct compared to how you started the fight. That's not the case with Alatreon. I actually think this is something they can improve, and I hope to see in Wilds, that they do improve that element of it for their epic boss battles. A great example would actually be Bracca's. It's very distinct, the final phase. It's super distinct compared to everything else you've done, and is unique in its own individual way. And I do think epic mega boss battles deserve that as a flavor change. A lot of people ask me, like, do I like the fight? I do. I actually think the fight is very, very good. I have 2 major complaints. One is the thinness of the walls is unnecessary. It really is truly unnecessary. I don't know if Bex can find the clips because there's a lot of footage. We streamed for like 9 hours or maybe longer yesterday trying to kill this. There were some occasions of wall bangs that were just absurd. Like, not in like a haha way, just like, it's just stupid. Like, it's right next to it. It's literally, at one point, half its head was hitting the wall and half its head wasn't, and it didn't count. And in moments, and this is where we get this sort of, I don't want to say elitist, but the more like elitist point of view, which is like, well, you don't technically need the wall bang. No, but it massively helps, right? Let's not get stupid here, okay? It massively, massively helps. And if you've set it up and you've lined it up pretty correctly and it doesn't work, that's a frustration level that is just not necessary. I can cope with them being smaller than normal walls, so you can't just mindlessly bash it into walls, yet they are needlessly thin, to the point where the only reasonably consistent way you can do it is by literally standing right next to them. And I'm sure somebody's found some spot in the room where it's like, if you do it here, it perfectly lines up. Sure, right? Whatever. But in general, first kill progress, you have to get right next to it to the point where it's a good 100-degree plus arc is going to hit the wall. Like, you kind of want it in the wall to be able to do it. On occasion, you'll spot a moment where it just happens to be facing it and it'll go for it. Other occasions where it is absolutely doing that, it's like literally staring at it. So it's like, all I need to do is hop on and fire and it will go into it. I've positioned myself between it and the wall. So you've put all this work into it, right? You've positioned yourself between the monster and the wall. You've waited for a certain attack that isn't lightning or it's red lightning. It's doing a breath or something like that. And that means you can grip on, because you can't grip on in any of the other situations, because you need like 3 seconds to fire it off. And if you don't have that 3-second window, which you're often denied in this fight, then you're screwed anyway. So you've got all these conditions are met, ultimately, right? Tick, 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 tick. And then you fire it, but then it switches to the cat in that 3-second window. It will just swing like 90 degrees and just go flying off somewhere else. And you're like, I think it just looked at the cat. Midway in the time it took me to attach onto the head, press the trigger, and the guy to draw back his hand to fire, it's turned a full 90 degrees somewhere else. That can be very frustrating. So that would be my biggest complaint, is I think they're a bit too thin. They could be like double the size and it would still meet the criteria of like, you have to line this up correctly, I think. And the second one is the lack of flavor in a long fight. On that note, one of the messages I've received throughout the night, and I'm not really hyper aware of this, but this could be another contribution to a lot of the feedback we get about people confused as to how this is so hard. I don't know this for sure, so just give me a little rope on this one. Is that there are 2 versions of Alatreon. One is way harder. I believe that's the one I'm doing. One is way, way harder. The other one is nowhere near as hard. So I honestly don't know whether a lot of people got their kills in multiplayer or something like that, but there was a lot of people who don't really understand how the fight works, which we need to know in order to kill this. But either way, it's not like we played great. There's room for improvement everywhere on this fight. And often I find, at least with the way I'm playing, I often find it kind of comes down, I don't want to say it's RNG, but it does, there is elements where like you'll get certain attacks that are just so much better to deal with. So much better that you just feel great. And one of the biggest problems I actually ran into yesterday, which was something that felt unsolvable, and a lot of the OGs, I've started to recognize some of the names who are either other content creators or are very much OGs in this game, were really trying to like figure out what we could do here. And the problem is like phase 3 in particular, when he's trapped in ice, he flies an awful lot. An awful lot. And I'm not just talking about the actual flight mode where he flies around. He usually does that twice per phase, but actually just attacks that just send him up into the air where you just can't do much. You can either grip on and do a ZSD, or you can go up and weaken him. You can try and hit the toes, but a lot of these attacks are complete downward attacks, which means you can't stand underneath him. A lot of that, which makes damage almost impossible if he's doing that back-to-back, and he can do these things back-to-back, so he'll fly, be enraged, so you can't flash him out the sky, you can't do anything like that. He'll land and then immediately go into some sort of frost down breath or something along those lines where you're like very, very limited in the choices you have in terms of actually dealing DPS. And that means that this phase is kind of like a throwaway because you can't do much whatsoever, and you need that damage, right? You've got to bring the fight over. You've got to be able to do something, and you kind of need to ground him. But some people suggested, okay, smoke bombs might be the play. I hadn't used smoke bombs till now. So I drafted that in. This is one of those really funny things where the first time I tried this, it worked perfectly. It was great. It was really good. He flew up in the air. He was doing like his big opening attack. I just smoke bombed and he looked around and then he landed. And I was like, oh, wow, this is great because now I have flash and smoke bomb. And I think smoke bomb I can utilize during the enrage where I can't get him down any other way, right? Unless it's like a cool headbutt or something. I can't do it. This is awesome. And it never worked again. Why? The cat. The goddamn cat. The cat gave away my position many times. I tried after I was like, oh, the cat is like drawing it to me. Because the way the cat works is it'll be near Alatreon. So I'll be like slightly away to get the smoke bomb so I'm not getting hit by like the local AoE or whatever. And the cat then warps to your position and stands like beside you or something like that. And so he just targets the cat and shoots it, which travels through you. And you're like, oh, okay. It gave me away. But with 2 back-to-back smoke bombs that are timed properly, that can work. I did get it to work later on. It's more about a kind of hope and a prayer and doing it during certain attacks and hoping the cat doesn't just warp to you because he will launch some attacks against the cat. But that was advantageous when it worked. So it was one of those things like, I'll try it. If it's not worked, it's not worked, and we're no worse off. Although the second problem I had is it actually worked for me. He landed, so I came out to attack him, and he reset his flying phase and just went back up and flew again. So it was like we just made the whole flying phase like 50% longer. That's all we achieved here, was making it 50% longer. So it's a 50-50 on whether that's going to work. We did make some changes, though. I swapped over to the Glider Mantle. I actually think this was a really good move. The Glider Mantle, I put in some more iframe gems in order to extend that. That really helped out a lot. I felt very comfortable when I had this mantle on with certain attacks, certainly the body slam. And I wanted this up a lot. And because it doesn't get consumed, it's up for a really long time. So it's just like having extra gem slots, which I don't have access to in my gear. That was really nice. And that also opened the opportunity to get the mount on the boss, which was nice, which screwed up a couple of times. I only found out during the podcast that you can actually shift body parts while you're mounted to reduce the knockoff. Sometimes that works. I think the issue I have, because I haven't had a lot of practice doing this, is that it's a constant spin when he's flying around, and you need to constantly adjust the camera. So the way I got this to work consistently, it was like I went like from head all the way to the tail, like in between one. So it was like head, shake, tail, body, shake, tail, and then back up again. But as the camera's spinning around, sometimes like going back the opposite way isn't correct because he's actually spanned. So I think it's a case of like watch all these things to get it right. Because I got a couple of mounts which weren't successful, because if you get shaken twice, you're off. That's just the nature of the beast. But let's get to the vote. So he didn't die. We pushed hard, and we got definitely a couple of, probably 2 max. That's how tough this is. 2 max potential kills that went wrong either through panic or the one that I threw away. So what do we do from here? That's the question. Because there is a massive element of stubbornness here in that, and I talked about this yesterday, I found this point. This is doable. We've seen it doable. We have seen the finish line, I think. I hope. We have seen the finish line and just not quite made it, which means we're kind of there. And there is always gameplay improvements, more damage uptime, more being able to capitalize on things that are damage down, take less hits so you don't need to heal as much. All these kinds of things are very much things we can consistently work on to get that kill. Or we can go and gear up, which will help. The message has been pretty clear, though. It's not going to... Until you unlock... I'm not sure exactly what you get when you get to these higher ranks. I believe the biggest one is Health Augment, which is the... as far as I understand it, because I haven't got it, is the ability to heal yourself via damage, which is massive for uptime. Because right now, if I take damage, I have to heal it up. The cat heal's not even going to heal me for enough. I have to get away and heal up. I have to get my weapon back out. Right, it's a huge amount of downtime. Where if he had the opportunity to like, oh, this is actually kind of an easy attack to punish, is I can do some healing off the back of this and be in a less scary position. And others just like more gem slots, because Many of the suggestions are like, you need this, this, and this. And we simply can't. There's no room for them, right? There's the things we have in can't really be sacrificed. Or if we do swap them, we're swapping them for... It's a loss and a minor change. It's a change rather than a gain is where we're at. But it's very noticeable that the latter 50% of this fight is enraged for most of the fight. Which means something like Agitator, which I've come to know is like one of the most powerful stats in the game, which is you do increased damage when they're enraged, would actually like really significantly shorten the duration of that period, the last 50%, which is the hardest 50%. And the latest gear does have that. So those advantages might be something we consider. At the same time, this is based, and a lot of people got confused by this, so I kind of want to be clear here. My historical progress on very, very hard fights has taken considerably longer than the time we spent on Alatreon. This isn't, the time and duration is not a problem for me. However, the saddest things I've ever experienced in video games in general is putting a lot of hours and a lot of effort into a very, very difficult boss. Getting to the point where we're in kill range, like this is going to happen. And then something changes with the boss. And it's just way easier. Or even 10% easier. And that satisfaction of that kill is lost. Because it's like, yeah, we did it, but we didn't do the one we learned. Right? But that doesn't generally include gear. If I think to like my WoW raiding days, we were always getting gear outside of it, and the boss hasn't changed in any way. So it's a mishmash. But I am fearful. Like, I am wary that we could go and get some enhanced gear and do preparation for Fat Alice should we decide to do it, and come back and we just kind of have a way easier time. And it's like, hey, you know, I don't know if people resonate with this feeling. I don't think all too many people do, but it's like, yay, yeah, we did it. Well, we didn't do the one we learned that much. But we did. It's a weird... I know it's a weird mental thing. I know it is. But there's a satisfaction that'll come from killing this now that I won't get if we change gear at all. Even if it's like pretty similar in difficulty. I know it sounds ridiculous. I'm aware of that. But it is how I feel. But we've also spent a lot of time on this. And at some point, sanity must prevail. Is like, this is just like... You need an almost... It has gotten to the point where people analyzing this, because it's been a great watch for a lot of people. It's gotten to the point where people are like, okay, you really, at this point, in order to meet these damage checks and to meet these things, you need to learn several combos that aren't listed in the game, which on occasion may help you. Right? That kind of situation. It's like, there's some combos that you can do that you need to go to the training dummy, which will potentially in some scenarios help you out. What I mean by that is there's some very basic suggestions that are coming out, like you should ZSD more. You should do this. True, but at the same time, this fight doesn't allow for that a lot of the time. Like, it really doesn't allow for you to just be like ZSD. You can do partials, which we've done a few of, which is like, I think I can ZSD here. Oh no, he can't. I've got to drop off. Or it'll just straight up knock you off immediately. There are some opportunities you could do it with the cloak, but you don't want to do it here because he's about to do this, he's about to do X and Y. All those kinds of things means that nearly every type of attacker, which is kind of entering very min-maxy territory, and perhaps that is what this boss demands. Perhaps this is a very, very endgame boss that, like, you should be completely, like, the master of the weapon, right? Which we're not. We're not. I freely admit that. We're not the master of the weapon. We're getting better. We're learning new things. We're keeping better uptime. Like, every day has been an improvement. We've had some damage phases where we've toppled him really stupidly quickly. Like, depending on his attacks and all those kind of things. We've like, staggered him too early. I want the topple after the elemental transition so I can break the horns in an easier way, right? I get good uptime on the vulnerable horns, which they're not vulnerable early. So all these kind of things. So we'll see. I'm going to put it to a vote. Do we gear up? Or do we push? I'm going to try not to influence the vote too much. And this video won't be out until the vote is done. My personal feeling as a player is I want to push on. But I also bear in mind, you know, we've got thousands and thousands of people watching this, and that might not be smart from, like, a viewer's perspective. I don't know. The smart play is to go and get more gear, more options, more choices, more gems, that kind of thing. I could be here for 2 weeks and I'd still be okay. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. All right. I'll see you tomorrow and you'll find out the results when the council has spoken. Bye, guys.